Maybe one more.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
So, yes, you and yes. No, stand up and as loud a voice. Going to space. What? Oh, what's it like? Empty. Now, well, the question is, it was a very moving experience, and I've talked about it a great deal. In fact, a while ago, I was asked to entertain at the Kennedy Center, and there's two people. Robert Shatner is a poet. He does other things, and we've been friends for a long time over duck. What does he mean by that? There's a Chinese restaurant near, not too far from my house in Los Angeles, that specializes in Chinese duck. Robert Chernow, who lives in New York, loves Chinese duck. So for some reason, so many years ago, I started to meet him at this Chinese restaurant, not knowing that he was primarily a writer, besides the other things he did. I don't know, about 5 years ago, he says, I'd like to bring a friend of mine, and his friend is Dan Miller of the group They Might Be Giants. Does anybody know the group They Might Be Giants? Okay. I didn't know They Might Be Giants to the Beatles, you know what I mean? So apparently They Might Be Giants is really avant-garde and really creative. So Dan Miller is like the guy, and I know nothing. So we're having duck, and Dan Miller says to the two of us, we should do an album, because he's a musician, and his friend, Robert Chernow, when they went to university together, those many years ago, they did musicals, and Robert wrote lyrics. I said, oh yeah, let's do it. So we start writing songs in the middle of COVID. And we suddenly are delirious with the joy of creating these songs. Robert had said, let's do them based on Bill's stories, adventures. So I started telling what I thought might be good song adventures, like leaving home in a cheap old car, $400 car, and I'm leaving home. I've graduated McGill University in Montreal. I've worked in theater and radio and television in Montreal as an amateur. I've got my first job in summer theater where I got paid some money, and now I'm moving on to Ottawa, where they had the first Canadian professional theater. They want me to be an actor there. So I'm leaving home, that incredible moment in most people's lives. So I'm crossing a bridge, and I must be a bridge across the St. Lawrence River, and an 18-wheeler is coming at me from across from there, and it's coming at me, and I'm in this little tiny English car, and that bubble of air that these 18-wheelers push me out of it all over the side. No, I'm not over the side. And I continue on. And my thought was, we're always going over a bridge, and there's always an 18-wheeler coming at us. So it became a song called The Bridge. So now, and we put that out, it becomes an album called Bill, and that's in Spotify and wherever else you buy albums. That was our first album together. But we had written so many songs that I get a call from the head of Kennedy Center saying, would I like to entertain at Kennedy Center, and did I have any material to sing? And Robert and Dan and I had put together 25 songs. Indeed, one of the songs, they had finally asked me to come up into space, and I'm now in New York City on my way to Texas. Okay, I'm doing something, I've forgotten what it was. And I meet with Dan and Rob and Steve, and we're sitting having dinner that Sunday night prior to my Monday morning going off to the space program. And let's write a story, let's write a song about space. So we start making some notes. One of the first things I did when I came back down was call them and say, all those things we were thinking about, writing about space, forget about it. It has no relationship to what I did, because what I did was go a day early. Like I arrived in Van Horn, Texas, in the West Texas area, the desert. I arrived Monday morning, and I'm a day early. And why am I here a day early? And nobody answered, and somebody said, well, why don't we, after breakfast, let's go to the gantry. Okay, let's go to the gantry. So we drive 20 miles, all this on Jeff Bezos' land, and we get to the gantry. There's no rocket there yet. The rocket's going to go up that night in 2 days' time for liftoff. But we're going to go to the gantry. So I'm looking at the gantry. We're at 4,000 feet. The desert's at 4,000 feet, not unlike Denver, which if you've been to Denver at 5,000 feet, get off the airplane, you're already breathless because you're a mile up in the air. So they said, all right, let's go up the gantry. And I don't want to, why am I here? I don't want to go up all right, so I go up 3 flights, and I stop. Wait a minute, let's look at the beauty of the desert. And I go up another 3. Finally, I make it to the 11 flights. And I'm sucking in air, and I'm doubled over, and I'm looking, and I see a room about the size of this stage. And I'm looking, and I can see through the door, and it's about a foot thick. And there was, what's the room for? And I said, it's just it's a foot thick in cement, and you can see that there are tubes of air there, and electrical communication was down below. And I said, well, what's the room for? And they said, in case something goes wrong. What could go wrong? I mean, what could go wrong? Nah, nothing could go right. So I get back down, and dumb me, it occurs to me, they've got me there a day early to see if the old guy can make it up the gantry. That was kind of, I didn't say anything. I thought, oh, geez, why didn't they have an elevator? Okay, so now we rehearse, and this is what we rehearse. There's a chair like that one there, except you're like this. And the whole thing, the next 2 days, was taken up with getting into a 5-point harness. Arm, shoulder, shoulder, and crotch. Except you're back here like this. Because the seat is taking on 2 jobs. One is to get you prone as much as possible, because there's going to be as many as 7 G's, 7 gravity forces on you. Now, I've been up in an F-16, seated behind, and the pilot made a turn. It was about 7 G's. And when those military pilots make a tight turn, their suit is an air suit, and automatically it inflates to stop the blood from going down into your legs. And coming out of your brain. So all the blood in your brain starts to go into your feet, and the suit swells up to stop it. On that F-16, the guy made a tight turn, and I fainted. I went, oh, and then, they don't want you to faint on the spaceship. So they had the seat back like this. But it was one thing to get out of it, just you hit the center part of the, or twist the center part of the 5-point harness. The problem is now you're weightless, and you got to get back into that. Weightless, and that's okay. Everything's all right except for the crotch piece, which you can't find where it's, yeah, I laughed a lot too. So, I never did find the hole. So, a couple of things happened along the way, which I might as well tell you about. So, the next 2 days later, we get to the gantry, and there is the rocket ship. And there's some gas bleeding out of the exhaust. So what's that? I said, well, it's, it's excess gas. Just, what kind of gas? Hydrogen. It's hydrogen gas. I'm sure most of you have seen the documentary on the Hindenburg, 300 feet long, the length of this thing here, and what they did, they only found this out later. So this lighter than air Zeppelin called the Hindenburg lands in New Jersey, and then they throw a rope down. It's like a ship, it's an airship, and they tie it off. In the act of tying it off, static electricity along the ground went up the rope and along the illuminized surface of the Hindenburg, and way back there, in one of the bags that contained hydrogen, the static electricity spark illuminated, fired on that gas. The whole ship burned, and there's documentary footage of people this size running, and the announcers on the documentary, famous words, he said, oh, the humanity of it, because people are dying, burning to death. That's what I remembered about hydrogen. So now, the four of us get in this spaceship and lying down, and this is the God's truth. The announcer, the guy, the countdown said, okay, we're removing the gantry now. Anybody who wants to get off, better get off now. I started to unbuckle. And then I thought, no, I can't do that, I'm Captain Kirk. So because of you, I stayed, I risked my life. And then, T-minus 16, T-minus 14, hold, there's an anomaly. What the hell is an anomaly? An anomaly is when something shouldn't be there. Like me, I shouldn't have been there. I was the anomaly. There's an anomaly. Hold the count. Oh my God. What's this thing going to explode like the Hindenburg? Okay, anomaly, no anomaly. We're going in, and they go ahead. Countdown, lift off. So I lift you off. There's two gravitational forces on my chest to the point of, I think I'm going to die. And all of a sudden, it's relief. The Kármán line is like 50,000 feet up, something like that. Get above that, you're out of the pull of gravity. Suddenly everything is light, and you're floating, and I'm out of the sea. Now, this was the second voyage of that Blue Origin thing. The first voyage was the owner of Blue Origin and Amazon. Jeff Bezos went up with his brother and a lady, a somewhat elderly lady astronaut, and a young kid. Okay, I don't know how they found, Bezos' brother is obvious, how they found what they did with the lady astronaut, or where they found the kid, I don't know. But there are cameras everywhere on the spaceship. So this is what I see of either the richest or the second richest man in the world. He's floating in weightlessness, and his back is to the camera, and his feet are splayed, okay, like this. And he's floating in the air like this, and the kid is over here throwing candies at his asshole. And I'm thinking, that's not what I'm going to do. So when they said weightless, you can get out, pop this thing, the others are celebrating being there. I go to the window. Now, for some reason, I'd been looking back, and what I saw looking back is something I've never heard discussed before. There was a wake, like a ship, like a submarine going through the water. Look back there, it's going through the air. In the blue air, it's leaving a wake. I've never heard anybody say that before. Look back there. And then I look up front. I spent a good part of my life reading, talking, listening to space things. Like, constellations and collections of stars and looking at the Hubble, and then recently looking at the Webb as a telescope, and the mystery of space has intrigued me for my lifetime. What goes on up there is so dynamic, is so creative and destructive at the same time. The forces at work in the universe are unimaginable. I mean, and the weird things. We had the Big Bang, everything exploded. Now, gravity should be at work and everything should be contracting. It's not contracting. It's expanding at an increasing rate of speed. How is it contracting? It shouldn't be contracting. Nobody knows. They call it black matter, black energy. They don't know. 95% of the universe is this black energy, and we don't know what it is. Neil deGrasse Tyson, a buddy, I have arguments with him on the air and on television. How can you know? What are you talking to us about? And telling us these stars that you don't know? What makes you think speed, light is the defining speed? How do we know that? 95%, it's like looking through a gauze curtain. You can't see anything in this black energy and black matter. So we've gone around on that. But what we can see, the formations of stars, it's incomprehensible. It's so destructive and constructive. It's both imploding and exploding, sometimes at the same time. Great flashes of light that go across the universe. I've been fascinated by space. I've talked to great experts. I interviewed Stephen Hawking. I'm fascinated by that. Looking through a telescope, what I saw was blackness. There was none of those mysterious, wondrous things in space. It was total blackness. I have been in a cave where they shut the door to the cave, And the blackness in the cave is so palpable, is so there that you almost feel it in your face. You can't move your feet, you're too afraid. That kind of blackness is the blackness of space. And that's what I saw when I did that. That's death. And that, the blue, the beige of the desert, the white of the clouds, that's life. That's life, that's death. And then I could see the curvature of the earth, about like that. So if I finished this giant circle, I would have encompassed this rock that we all live on. It's tiny. No, I mean it. I've driven across, when I was going from high school to university, I thumbed my way from Montreal down to San Diego, up to Vancouver, across to Chicago, back to Montreal, all in the summer before I went to college. I went on my thumb. It was endless. I've driven on a motorcycle recently, from Chicago to Los Angeles in a motorcycle. I've been in a truck. I've been in a car by myself with family. I've been in a truck with a dog. I've been in a truck alone. I've gone across this country endless times, and I'm telling you, the roads disappear into infinity, and it goes on forever. Ever. It's not. This is so I'm interviewing Stephen Hawking. I've gone to Cambridge University in England to interview one of the finest minds of the 20th century. And I'm waiting to go to his house to interview him, and I'm sitting in the Cambridge University Cathedral, which is very much like the great cathedral in London. It's a little bit smaller, but incredibly large. It's empty. I'm sitting in whatever you call that shaft of the cathedral that goes up, and all the stained glass windows, and I'm sitting in it, just like enjoying being alone in this giant building. And they were cleaning the organ. And I don't know what they used, whether they're using rubs, but the guy cleaning would play a chord, and then he'd clean and they'd play another chord. So it was almost like Beethoven, bong, this thing, and it would reverberate. And I was sitting there alone in the cathedral. It was like an enormous experience. And I looked up, and the sun was shining through the stained glass windows. And for a moment, a mote of dust caught the sunlight, and I thought, oh my God, that's what Earth must look like in the universe. It's a tiny, almost unviewable particle of dust. That's what Earth is like. It's so small. It's small. It's a small, negligible planet in a negligible Milky Way. We're negligible. The Earth is negligible. And then we're these little things crawling on the Earth. We're like bacteria crawling on the Earth. We're negligible.